As Daniel Ricciardo accepts the reality that he will not be racing in Formula 1 next season, we finally understand why the best option he seemed to have for 2023 never became an option. Ricciardo has probably known for a while he will not be racing in F1 next season and has now publicly admitted that in the wake of Alpine signing Pierre Gasly. A possible reunion with the Renault works team seemed like Ricciardo's only serious opportunity once it became clear he would leave McLaren at the end of the year. But that wasn't the case, and we'll explain why. Now what Ricciardo is looking at as only a sabbatical next season carries a serious risk of becoming the end of his Grand Prix career. In pursuit of a top driver to fill the void left by Fernando Alonso and then Oscar Piastri in the summer, Alpine never seemed to seriously entertain the prospect of re-signing Ricciardo. He only left the Renault works team at the end of 2020 to join McLaren, but his time there has been a major disappointment, hence he's being shuffled out 1 year before the end of his contract. But that process only played out over the summer break. At the same time, Alpine realised it would lose Alonso and Piastri. That means a multiple Grand Prix winner has been on the market for as long as Alpine's known for sure it needed a new driver. But Alpine wasn't interested. In fact, it was willing to spurn Ricciardo to chase Gasly even though he was under contract with Red Bull and AlphaTauri. When we asked Alpine team boss Otmar Szafnauer why, the answer wasn't particularly illuminating. He admitted there had been a discussion about Ricciardo, but then shifted focus to why Alpine wanted Gasly instead, saying he meets the criteria of being experienced, fast and young. That didn't really answer the direct question asked, so we have to read between the lines a bit. Does Ricciardo really not meet the same criteria? Gasly does have a few years on him, but Ricciardo's only 33, so he's several years Alonso's junior and should be in his peak with at least a few seasons left in the tank. Experience is also a given, so what about fast? Well, that is a legitimate question mark, as it depends on the environment and the car. It didn't work at McLaren, but he was extremely successful at Renault. So there are two possible explanations. Either there were serious doubts about his capabilities to return to that form after 2 bruising years at McLaren that have damaged his stock, or people just didn't want to work with Ricciardo again after he left Renault just 2 years ago. We think it's the latter. The prevailing theory for Alpine dismissing Ricciardo early in the process is that Renault boss Luca Di Maio was completely against rehiring the man who walked out on the works team having been hired at great expense. Especially as that same man has now been rejected by the team Alpine's on course to beat in the championship. Ultimately, Alpine could easily present a pretty significant body of evidence against signing Ricciardo, just as it could reel off plenty of reasons in favour of Gasly. Ricciardo would have been a high upside gamble, and Alpine decided not to take it, but that strikes at the heart of Ricciardo's problem. Even if he is still capable of being the stunningly good driver he's been for much of his career, nothing underlines the decline in his paddock reputation than the team that paid him an absolute fortune until 2 years ago now doesn't want to go near him, even though he'd cost a lot less this time round. Even if Ricciardo's not around in 2023, we still will be. If you like this video and want to see more, but you're not already subscribed to the channel, just click the button below to change that. It's super easy and it really helps us out. The reality of the way the driver market has played out is Ricciardo says he'll be hitting pause for a little bit on his F1 career in 2023. He struggled since joining McLaren in 2021 with the notable exception of winning last year's Italian Grand Prix, and McLaren decided it was better to pursue an alternate option to partner Lando Norris. That's why it moved to sign the highly rated 2021 Formula 2 champion Piastri from Alpine early in the summer, with the intention of either negotiating Ricciardo's exit or keeping Piastri as reserve in 2023, then promoting him in Ricciardo's place in 2024. Ricciardo has agreed to leave McLaren, but either missed out on or has not been interested in the remaining vacancies for 2023. Gasly has joined Alpine instead, with Nyck de Vries replacing him at AlphaTauri, while Zhou Guanyu has been re-signed by Alfa Romeo, and the final vacancies are at Haas and Williams. Ricciardo isn't interested in a back-of-the-grid drive and instead wants to prioritise finding the most competitive 2024 seat possible. We understand Ricciardo is willing to take a reserve driver role in F1 next year because he wants to remain close to goings-on in the paddock and has been linked with such a position at Mercedes and even his old team Red Bull. Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see Ricciardo do next season and if you think he should try some other categories in the meantime. But be warned, it's currently something he has no intention of doing, even on an invitational basis. That's despite NASCAR team boss Justin Marks reaching out to Ricciardo, a massive NASCAR fan, to drive Trackhouse Racing's Project 91 car that ex-F1 racer Kimi Räikkönen has already driven as a guest entry. Ricciardo says he's still not of the view that that's the best thing for him to do right now, as he thinks it would be bad for his F1 image if he started sampling other series and looked like he was moving on. Laudable as Ricciardo's mix of optimism and pragmatism may be about 2023, it's hard to see why he'll suddenly have a wider range of options for 2024. There will be more movement in the driver market, as there always is. Drivers and teams can fall out, some drivers can just walk away, and there's an inevitable batch of out-of-contract options that Ricciardo may be keen on replacing. It's difficult to know exactly who is out of contract next year, as there will be some drivers on options, plus we don't know what the deals will be for the drivers Haas and Williams eventually confirm. Haas will be choosing between Nico Hülkenberg and incumbent Mick Schumacher, whereas Williams is rumoured to be leaning towards a promotion for Formula 2 racer Logan Sargent, assuming he does well enough in the F2 season finale in Abu Dhabi to secure his super licence. But taking a reasonable stab at what drives are currently theoretically up for grabs for 2024, there's only one noteworthy out-of-contract option: Lewis Hamilton, who we're all expecting will sign a new Mercedes deal anyway. Ricciardo will therefore rely on a major variable helping him out if he's to find himself in any better a situation than he has right now. Hamilton retiring, a Fernando Alonso Aston Martin implosion, Red Bull or Ferrari suddenly and surprisingly wanting a new second driver, these are the sorts of things that Ricciardo may be dependent on to get the kind of drive he's hoping for. Ultimately, he's highly unlikely to be able to force the issue, at least not for a team above the lower midfield. And Ricciardo clearly decided he's not willing to chase that kind of drive for 2023, so the question is, could that change for 2024? Well, it might. Ricciardo may take some time off completely to have the kind of break he and all drivers experienced when the season was put on hiatus at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Ricciardo's told us in an exclusive interview that left him with a massive hunger to return, and he thinks the same could be true next year, so maybe he'll come to the conclusion he wants to be on the grid at all costs. That could in turn enhance the appeal of a drive he currently sees as not worthwhile. Plus, another year of seeing how the Haas or Williams projects play out could provide more concrete evidence of which might be worth taking a punt on. But the point is, unless Ricciardo's willing to lower the standards that stopped him wanting to be on the 2023 grid for the sake of it, a return in 2024 is not going to be in his control. So next year's silly season probably needs to be as volatile as this one for Ricciardo to get the kind of move he seeks. That means his plan for 2023 just being a pause of his F1 career rather than the end has to be rooted more in hope than expectation.